Most buyers think that the skillet size is a one-time decision and they'll just stop thinking about it. You'll just rotate between sizes depending on what you're cooking. So whether one skillet can actually handle most outdoor situations, that's the question in today's video. I do a ton of cooking outdoors. Sometimes it's cooking over fire, sometimes it's cooking over charcoal, sometimes over propane, sometimes it's in the backyard on the grill. And I bought this size thinking it was just gonna be part of the rotation, not my default go-to. I really wanted something that worked for real outdoor cooking and not just occasional use. Thought that I would just still be reaching for my smaller pans more often than I did. By the way, I do own a ton of cast iron. My thought process was about being flexible, but in reality, what I found out, it was more about consistency. And I was surprised how often that this size handled both small and large cooks without compromise. And I think a lot of times people think that the larger skillets, they're only for big meals. Now, honestly, when I'm going out, it's usually either just me or just myself and my wife. We are not cooking a meal for a giant family. So without a doubt, the weight, it definitely is noticeable, but I think it's kind of predictable once you kind of build the muscle memory. Cleanup, I don't know, the cleanup, a little more effort, but not meaningful enough. Doesn't make much of a difference compared to my smaller ones. Now, of course, if you're in a tiny apartment, I understand about storage, but if it's accessible, it definitely gets used. I hang mine up. There's a little hole right there. Hang it up on the wall in my garage with a little hook. I reach for it automatically, regardless of my meal size. I think once you adapt to the size and to the weight, the friction pretty much disappears. All right, so this question comes up quite a bit, and I think it comes up because a lot of people assume that skillet size is just a one-time decision, like you buy one, maybe two, and then you're done thinking about it. And I think the assumption that most people have is, well, I'll just rotate it depending on what I'm cooking. Small pan for quick stuff, bigger pan for meals. That makes sense on paper. But the doubt people don't really say out loud is whether one skillet can actually handle most outdoor cooking without you constantly wishing that you bought a different one. Because when you're cooking outside, whether it's camping or cooking on the road, whatever, you just don't want to think. You just want something that works. So the real question isn't what size is best, it's whether or not there's a size that quietly becomes the default. I'll come back to that later. Now, when I bought this size skillet, I didn't buy it thinking it would replace anything. The idea was that it would still just be part of my mix. I fully expected to still grab smaller pans, at least most of the time. What I really wanted was something that worked for real outdoor cooking and not just the occasional campsite. And honestly, I assumed that I'd use it a lot less than I do, and that assumption was just wrong. And here's what surprised me. My expectation was flexibility. I was thinking that I was going to gain more options by having multiple pans. But what actually happened was consistency. So this size, it just worked for smaller meals, for bigger meals, whatever. And the thing that kind of annoyed me in a weird kind of way was realizing that it made some of my other cast iron skillets kind of feel unnecessary. And that's not something that people really talk about because there's this idea that bigger skillets are only for bigger meals. You don't lose control using a bigger pan, you just have more room to work. So yeah, it definitely is heavier. There's no getting around that, but honestly, the weight isn't surprising after a while. Once you've used it a few times, your body just knows what to do with it. You kind of get used to it. Of course, we know that storage matters more than people realize. If this pan is buried under a bunch of gear, you're not going to use it. If it's easy to grab, it becomes automatic. I love that there's this like little hole here so I can just hang it up on the wall, put it in my garage, super easy to grab. And that's really the key. I think the long-term reality is that once you adapt to the size, most of the friction, it just kind of disappears. What feels big at first eventually just becomes normal. So if you'd rather stop thinking about which pan to bring, this is usually where that shift happens. Distinction definitely matters more than people think. At the end of the day, the best skillet size is the one that you just stop overthinking. So if a pan earns your default status, that's probably more important than any specs or any measurements. I'm going to put the related links in the description down below if you want to take a closer look. I appreciate you watching. We'll see you in the next video.